Okay, welcome back to season 3 of the Well Off podcast. I'm your co-host, Dr. Tara, and I am here in person with the beautiful Gina Sim.
Hello, Dr. Tara. So happy to have you in the studio here in the iHeartMedia in Hartford, Connecticut. Welcome back.
Thank you. I always hear like Jack Johnson singing Better Together. When we're in person, isn't it? It's always better when we're together.
It really is. And we have to cram in a lot of content because you are not here that often and I'm not in Jersey. We probably see each other like, 5 times a year maybe?
Yeah.
So, but we make it work.
Too little.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
And, I was thinking about, how we kind of met and how we started this podcast journey. And a lot of it was getting instincts. I know that you can read people very well and you get good energy vibes. And, I know when I had you on my last podcast, we really clicked and I had a good feeling and I trusted my gut about you being a good podcast host with me. And our next guest is going to be talking a lot about her journey and how she evolved. But one of the things is trusting your gut. And so what do you do with your clients and stuff when you're talking about that kind of thing? Like they have a bad feeling or something just doesn't seem right.
Well, I always encourage them to trust that sixth sense or that, higher level of consciousness, because we do have the gift of intuition and it's a survival skill. So when we met, it was very much like an instant connection, and that doesn't always happen with everyone,
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to rely on that. We do have the gift of intuition for sure.
Yeah, and trusting your gut is always something that you really want to pay attention to. And I know there's definitely been times in my life where I did not and learned the hard way, but there are times that I did and I'm like, see?
And we learn it in grammar school. Like I remember taking a test and asking a teacher a question and they always say, go with your first answer. And very often when we change an answer or we don't go with our gut, it's wrong. So we can apply the same to life.
Yeah, so we have a very interesting guest today that I heard speak at an event, and I was so moved by her speech and her whole presence and the whole vibe and the energy. And immediately, as soon as I left, I found her on LinkedIn, and I was like, you have to come on our podcast because you would be an amazing guest. So Tara, who do we have today?
Well, I'm excited to introduce Andi Campbell, who is a national leadership coach, speaker who's been featured on TED Talks, and a fractional executive. She's working across the nation. She's highly intuitive. She has amazing backgrounds of a yoga teacher, a nutritional health coach, and she's a black belt in Tang Soo Do.
Wow.
Can't wait to hear more about that. Andi, welcome to the Well Off podcast.
Thank you, Dr. Tara. Hi, Gina.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
So tell our guests who you are. You are a Renaissance woman with many, many talents. We love that on our podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, no, well, as you said in my intro, leadership coach and fractional work, doing a lot of fractional executive work. I started as my career many years ago in HR, actually.
Okay.
And spent many, many moons in HR, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit, and then took a transition into business leadership as a CEO, and then just in the last 6 months have made the decision to do a little bit of work on my own. So that's where I've landed with leadership coaches, or how I got into leadership coaching and into fractional work. So we can talk a little bit about that if interest.
Yeah, I love that. And you used to work for Laz Parking.
I did, yes, many years. I spent almost 10 years as the head of HR, the chief HR officer for Laz.
Wow, yeah, so they're one of our clients here at iHeart, and my cousin also works there.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah, we may know each other.
I think you do, well, because they were at the event, and I was like, can you put me in touch with Andi? And she was like, yeah.
Okay, yeah, then we definitely know each other.
Yes.
So you are, I think, no longer an anomaly in that you've changed your careers, which is becoming more and more commonplace. Now I think is the number 4 or 5 times at least in the adult lifespan. But it takes a lot of thought and intention. So walk us through what that looked like, journeying from HR to a CEO to now having this national presence.
Yeah. It's so funny because you introed about gut and talking about our gut, and listening to our gut as our guide. And I would say that's been the stronghold for me in every transition that I've made, has been, what is my gut telling me, and what's the driver here in terms of my intuitive sense. So starting in HR, obviously I mentioned I spent 10 years working as the head of HR for Laz, but before that was even working in HR roles in San Diego. So I actually landed in Hartford, Connecticut. Hartford has it, as they say.
Yeah.
From San Diego,
Do
California. From San Diego, California. And so prior to working at Laz, I was working in talent development in a couple of big companies. So made the leap based on just a variety of different little things that had happened in my life where my gut said, just go, just try it.
Yeah.
And I did. So then after being in HR for many years, I had a chance after meeting a woman who was running the company where I became the CEO. I was actually her first national client. Wow. So I brought Laz in as a client for WellSpark. That was the company owned by Connecticut, a local insurance company. And we became one of their clients. She and I connected, and it was just at a time when things were crazy in the world with COVID. Yeah. The world had just shut down. People weren't parking cars.
Okay. And from a non-Connecticut, and our listeners, I don't know what Laz is.
Yes. Yeah. So, Laz is a national parking company. Started in the Hartford, Connecticut area. Yeah. So Laz Parking, they are in 30 states. At the time I left, we had about 15,000 employees. So quite a large presence, over 2,000 locations. And I know now they're expanded even further, over 20,000 employees and across multiple states and into Canada now. So thanks for
Yes. We have to remember not everyone knows.
Not everybody knows Connecticut. Yeah. So anyway, so I was working as the head of HR, and actually at the time the world shut down, and I had health coaches working for me because we really had a real commitment to the idea that we want to bring people's health forward, honestly, as an organization. And at the time, though, people aren't parking cars, we're furloughing employees, we're trying to figure out how to navigate the business. And I was up against this really, really important decision. Like, how do I let go of the talent that's most important, health coaches, for people at a time when they need them the most? And at the same time, how do I keep them when I'm furloughing thousands of people? So fast forward, we found this wonderful company. We outsourced our health coaches. We were able to keep the service by not keeping the payroll. And that's how I actually got introduced to WellSpark. I spent a year or so working with them as a client, and then had the chance to jump into a business leadership role. And I just said, you know what? Now's the time. It's time for me. And so I did. And so that's how I ended up being in a leadership role on the business side and making the change from HR to business. And then from there, spent a wonderful 3 years. We went through an acquisition, and I took the team through this acquisition of the company to a big player out of Chicago called Vitality Group. And 3 days after we signed the letter of intent on the acquisition, I got diagnosed with cancer. And I had this beautiful gift of intervention to say, well, now's the time for me to make a different change. So it was a wonderful gift for me, and I've had the pleasure of just exploring what that looks like for me from a career perspective as I move into what I'm calling my wisdom season, the season where I'm moving from having been in these full-time roles to delivering my wisdom.
I love that. And can relate 1,000%.
Yeah. Talk to us about your cancer diagnosis.
Yeah. So I have a rare form of lymphoma. It's called splenic marginal zone lymphoma. If you haven't heard of it, it's normal because most people hadn't, including me. And so I was diagnosed back last September, which is just a year ago from this conversation. And I am currently in what they call active surveillance. And so for cancers like these, a lot of times we don't treat until it becomes something that needs to be intervened with high symptoms or lots of symptoms. So I'm currently in active surveillance. I will be in active surveillance for the rest of my life. And I'm in a unique situation with the kind of lymphoma I have that it's incurable, and I will live with it forever, hopefully as healthy as possible.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Cancer is a chronic condition, which is a whole new world that I had no idea existed.
Right.
I did not either.
And we've spoken about a cancer diagnosis many times on our podcast, and with Gina being a survivor primarily, and your whole world comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah, it does.
Now, how did you find out?
Yeah, that's such an important part of my story, and I think what Gina and I, she probably experienced in the talk that I had, which is...
Yeah, do you want to start from the beginning?
Absolutely.
Because this talk that I was talking about, let's dive into that. So yeah, start from the beginning.
Yeah, so a number of years ago I had a physical and had my blood work done, and there were a few abnormalities, and I thought, that's strange. That doesn't feel right to me. And it was at the time that COVID was happening, and I had COVID, and my doctor said at the time, I'm seeing a lot of COVID patients with some of these same abnormalities. It's not unusual. That made sense to me, so we moved on.
What were they, Andi?
It was at the time my lymphocytes and my monocytes, like all my lymphocytes and my blood markers were off, as well as I had a very high white blood count. So those were the initial markers for me. So fast forward to my next physical, and I had a number of markers that were still consistently high or out of whack. High white blood count, other markers out of whack. And that happened a number of different times over the course of a few years. And I consistently asked my doctor for support, and my doctor consistently said, this is nothing to worry about. I do not worry about numbers like this. So my gut was screaming, no, this isn't right. There's more here. There's more to the story. So fast forward, and the work I do, and I was doing at Wellspark, was all about employee well-being. So I knew a lot about some of the newest and latest, greatest tests that were coming out in the market. And I had heard about a test called the Gallery test. And if you haven't heard of this test, it's Gallery with an I. You pay out of pocket for it, unfortunately. It's not
I've
terribly
never heard of it. Have you heard of this?
So Galli?
ERI. GALLERI,
okay.
Gallery test. And so I heard about this test, and I asked my doctor. So basically what this test does is it's a blood test, and it looks for active cancer cells in your DNA. It is not diagnostic, but it's looking for cancers that they don't have screenings for, like pancreatic, like lymphatic, lymphomas, leukemias, like ovarian. So I was very interested in this. I have a cancer history in my family. My father had an indolent lymphoma before he passed. My mother has an active leukemia. I knew the markers in my blood didn't feel right, and I knew about this test. And my doctor said, no, I'm not going to order this test for you because it has a lot of false positives. So it didn't sit well with me, and I wasn't feeling good about it. Fast forward, I had a friend who had a wonderful doctor who she had told me about, and I just decided to give him a call and see if I could get a consult with him. This is the most amazing part of the story. I walk into his office, and right there he has a bunch of brochures, and one of them is for the Gallery test.
Wow.
So I, of course, have my consult with him, and I ask him, hey, tell me about your relationship with the Gallery test. And he said, it's not for everybody, but for some patients, it's right if they want to pay for it, etc. Anyway, fast forward, we do my physical, looks at my numbers, and he says, we should do this. I do it, and less than a week later, he called me and he said, we have a B-cell abnormality, and it came back positive, so now we need to do the diagnostics. And again, the Gallery is not a diagnostic, it's a screening. And then from there, what it does is it says, yes, you have active cancer cells, and then it tells you it's either here or here. So it's either lymphatic, or in my case, it was going to be myeloid, which would be like plasma, so either blood or plasma. And it gives the doctor a place to go looking for diagnostics.
Fascinating.
So he referred me to an oncologist, and off we went from there, and that was literally 1 year ago. So had I not trusted my gut, had I not listened to myself and advocated for myself, which is why when we met, I was talking about unapologetic self-advocacy. And I believe this across the board, whether you're in a leadership role or it's about your health. I mean, we have to speak up for ourselves, and we have to find the tools and the resources and the skills to do that. And particularly when you have a spidey sense saying something's not right here. And it turns out I do have an incurable lymphoma, and luckily I found it when I did, and I have amazing care, and I'm doing great, and I will live with this for the rest of my life.
So in talking about your intuition and your gut, this is not the first time that you've followed your gut.
No, it's not. It's so, this cancer component, I think the reason I was so, such a strong advocate for myself was because of how much I've trusted my gut in the past. And when I haven't, things haven't gone well. I could go back years and years, all the way back to the time I was 23 years old and standing at my own wedding thinking, this is the worst decision of my life. By the way, not the guy I'm married married to now. So
Oh,
she's
thank
listening,
God.
I should
Okay.
say that's not the wedding I'm referring to.
Okay, so you were 23, about to get married.
About to get married, and honestly, I didn't listen to my gut. And wonderful guy, and just not a good fit for me, and I knew it. I just knew it. And
But you married him anyway.
I married him anyway. I did. Yeah, I married him anyway. And I go back even further. I have stories and stories and stories about how I've had these spidey senses that have led me either to good decisions or bad decisions, or not my best decisions, but up to and including taking a role as a leader in HR in Hartford, Connecticut, where I knew not a soul, from San Diego, California, and literally just picking up my life and moving here thinking, I don't know, something just feels right. Something feels right about it. Or I had a wonderful career in HR with an excellent employer, and saying, you know what, now's my time if I'm going to make a shift into business leadership, and I have this great opportunity to be mentored by someone. I didn't know her well. At the time, I had met her 2 or 3 times, but I just sat with it, and I thought, you know what, this is the time. And it goes down to the smallest things, like hiring decisions.
Yeah.
When, you know, I've interviewed people in my roles and thought, this is not a good fit. And I've hired them or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, in both cases, it always, you know, every time I trusted my gut, it worked.
Do you think you have a little bit more of a spidey sense than most people with trusting their intuition?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I think the difference between me and others is only the fact that I believe it's a gift. Because I think that sometimes we question ourselves. A lot of times we use the facts that we know to be true to be reasons to justify not listening to what we actually believe in our hearts. And when we think about what self-trust is, the way I define trust is that we literally trust in our ability to make good decisions and to have judgment and to be capable. That's really what self-trust is from my lens. And so when I think about what that looks like for others, I think the only difference between me and others is maybe the fact that I just have more trust. And then there's an expression of that trust in confidence. And a lot of times it's hard to be confident in what you know to be true. You trust your judgment, you trust your abilities, you trust your decision making, and then you have this moment where you're thinking, is that really true? Well, so-and-so knows a lot more than me and they didn't. Or this expert says blah, 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 and you talk yourself out of it. So I don't know that I would say I have a better or worse or you know, stronger. I would say over the years, I've leaned into it.
It's more developed. It's like a muscle.
It is.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Tara's kind of a little more than normal.
And the more you rely on it and have the proof, right, that your instinct was right and your judgment was correct.
Yeah. I do think that there are people in this world who are gifted healers from a place of intuitive sensing. Do I think I'm in that space? Maybe. You know, I have stories. I probably told one in the conversation that Gina heard me, or the keynote Gina heard from me, which is, I remember being my 15th birthday and having my friends over for a sleepover like we did in the 90s.
Yes.
You know, those great sleepovers that we had in the 90s. And we were watching the movie Beaches. You may have heard
this movie.
Yes. Well, if you haven't seen the movie Beaches, one of the key parts is at the end where the best friend is dying.
Yes.
And so I remember it was like the 20th time I'd seen Beaches at this party because I loved this movie. And for some reason, that moment in time, that day, that evening, I was having this emotional response that was uncontrollable. I'm locking myself in the bathroom. I can't stop crying. So fast forward to the next day, I find out that my best friend died that night at the exact same time as I was watching the movie. So I think that those are moments in time when I could say, am I a gifted sensor, feeler? Probably. I have a strong feeling there. And that's not the first time. I recently even, you know, that was a sad story, but I have lots of positive ones. I hugged a friend recently and I just said, are you pregnant? And she goes, I just found out yesterday. How did you?
Oh my God.
And I have had situations where somebody's walked into my house and spent the holidays with me, and I said to my husband, the new husband. By the way, the new husband.
The new husband.
I said to him, I'm worried about about her. I think she's dying. And then a month later, we found out she had stage 4 lung cancer. So I don't.
I just got chills. I just got chills.
I wouldn't tell you I feel like I'm this intuitive. I would never position myself that way. I think I've honed my gift.
Yeah.
Or continue to hone my gift.
I can relate to that completely, but I've had people, where I've shared stories, and then they'll say, well, tell me something. And I'm like,
it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I have
it
no,
totally
and
doesn't.
it happens a lot with strangers.
Yes. Yes.
I get names, and I'll, I can say, what does the name Elizabeth mean to you? And they'll say, oh my God, that's my sister. And how did you know that? I'm like, I don't know, but it's just a feeling, but I can't command it.
No, I can't either. I would say a lot of times for me, it's about connection, and we can make connections immediately with strangers. So if I feel you and I see you, I might have a connection with you, but my most common moments have been when I felt deeply connected to someone. Another example is a guy that actually worked for me for years. He has a lovely family, just this wonderful human. And one day I had this crazy dream that I'm about to talk about periods. Hopefully that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's okay.
We talked about vibrators.
Okay. We're going to talk period for a second. Okay. I had this dream that he took his daughter he was like at Macy's buying maxi pads. It was like this crazy story, but it was all about her getting her period and him being in this uncomfortable situation of dealing with it as a parent. And his daughter is like mid-teens. So anyway, the next day I was like, whoa, that was weird. So I thought about it. I'm like, I think I'm gonna say something to him. So I sent him a text. I'm like, I had a weird dream. I'm sorry to be creepy right now, but it's all about Hannah and her period. And, and he goes, I cannot believe this. Yesterday, my wife was out of town and she got her period for the first time.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And I know if he's ever listening to this, he'll know exactly who he is. And he said, you creep me out. Because it wasn't the first time that I had a moment for him. But my point being, I felt deeply connected to him. I was spending so much time with him at work. I was coaching him. I had named him in my mind as a successor for my role.
Yeah.
And so I was really spending time with him. And so that's, I think, a reason why sometimes it comes out for me.
So how do you use that gift in business, in life? How does it serve you?
Yeah, I think about myself as a leadership coach, and I'll be honest, my imposter syndrome shows up a lot when it comes to coaching, because if you were to ask me as a practitioner, I would say I've been coaching people for years. I have been in a leader role, and I have dozens of people who would say this and who have experienced me leveling them up, and me helping them. When I see potential in someone, I can invest so much time and energy into helping them level up. But I think, I don't have an ICF certification. I don't have some of the things that quote unquote typical leadership coaches in this world may have. And so I would say I position myself as a practitioner using my intuition to help develop leaders as a leadership coach. So that's one place.
And you have evidence.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have evidence.
Yes, I do. I do.
You have helped people level up.
So many wonderful stories of people that would be happy to say, I've had this amazing experience working with Andi. But I would say that's probably the number one place where I use it is when I'm working with people and individually coaching them to get them to the next level, or working with them on whatever is going on for them. It's tapping into that energy connection, and not from an ethereal, esoteric, wackadoodie sitch. This is what's going on with you. I'm sensing there's more that you're not telling me. Tell me what I'm missing here. It's a real opportunity to use the line of motivational interviewing and open-ended questions to get underneath what people might feel uncomfortable sharing publicly. That's usually when I use it most. And then, of course, a good example is I'm working with a client right now who I'm almost operating as let's say their de facto head of HR, or as a fractional head of HR, and I can sense that they have so much more to deliver to the market, and that there's opportunity to work with their people and their culture in a more effective way. I couldn't tell you I could articulate all the facts why, but I could tell you that some shifts and some mindset changes and some different ways to approach things would dramatically improve their progress, and that's a gut sense. It's doing it over time. I think there's wisdom and experience.
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And both of you know that.
Yes.
You know, you have experience in that. At some point or another, you're like, I know how to do this. Like, I see it. But I think some of that is a feeling.
Yeah.
So, Andi, we have listeners from all over the world. So who should contact you? Who's your ideal client? You know, who is it that you can take to the next level?
Yeah, I work best with people who are first growth minded, curious, who are interested in self-awareness, who recognize that they're part of not just solutions but also problems, and are willing and ready. They're in a readiness place, like, hey, I'm really ready to level up, but I know that to level up, I need to look in the mirror. I need to do some self-awareness. I need to think about what's next for me in terms of how I show up, and what my part is in not only just solutioning and results and performance, but also in progress. You know, where do I have opportunity? So I would say high potential leaders of all levels. That's what I would describe it as in short. High potential leaders of all levels. And when I say potential, I mean people who have the ability and capability to grow and the mindset for it. And curiosity. Like, curiosity and self-awareness to me are probably the most important qualities in a leader.
Self-awareness for sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, we've all worked for a leader who thinks they're freaking amazing.
Yes.
And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, you're like, actually,
actually, I have something to tell you.
Yeah. About
you know,
that.
And when you give them feedback, even when they ask for it, they're like, yeah, thanks. And
or disagree
and to get defensive, which we've all worked for those people, and I don't think that's anything other than a lack of readiness. I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're bad leaders. I just think they're not ready.
Right.
They're not ready for what I would consider to be leveling up to, you know, more alignment with their soul's purpose.
Yeah. And coaching, I feel, is really necessary for high-level leaders.
Yes.
I know personally I had a coach when I became a CEO because I knew I was ready. I knew that I was going to make mistakes because I'm human, but I wanted to make as few as possible and wanted to have, you know, that person that, because you can't confide in anybody either. So
especially in these leader roles.
Without a doubt. And you know, it sounds like egotistical, but it really is very lonely at the top.
It's
because
so
there's
lonely.
No one that you can talk to.
Yeah, I would offer to, just as it relates to that, when I was making the shift between my role in HR and into a business leadership role, I personally hired a coach. And the reason I did that was because I recognized that I had patterns that were not helpful, both in my leadership and in my experience in driving performance in an organization. And I said, if I'm going to make this change, it's time for me to get deeper and identify what those patterns are and start to make some shifts so that I can show up even better in this role. So I think the best leaders have coaches.
Yes.
Every athlete who's out there has a coach. Sometimes more than one.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's a place for training. Training is, if you liken it to, you know, the football field or something, you know, you're in the locker room and you're having you're learning your plays, play 1, play 2, play 3, play 4. That's training. That's great. You're building your skills and knowledge. We need that. Coaching is on the field in real time.
Yes.
It's course correction. It's that didn't work well. It's, wow, you did a great job with that. Let's talk about how to do more of that. And there is a difference, and there's a place for both. And the absolute best leaders all have coaches.
That's right. And, you know, I look at it as similarly, like, I think there are people that get married and think, well, I did it. I got my mate. I'm done now. I don't have to work so hard. But it's like, really, the work has just begun.
Just started.
You know, and you
Isn't
have to
that
work
so
even
true?
harder. And it's the same thing with leadership. It's not like, oh, I'm a CEO now, I can like rest on my laurels, I know everything. It's like, oh, heck no. Now you have to work even harder because you have to lead a team and you have to motivate and you have to, you know, be able to have the language to speak to people with compassion, but also structure and firmness, you know?
I would
it's a
say
skill.
There's a place between, the way I describe it is this intersection. And it's the intersection between individual well-being, that could be for your team or yourself, business impact, like the results you're driving, the business's needs, and workplace culture. And there's this intersection. And as a leader, and the higher level you go and the broader your scope, like you're talking about Tara being a CEO, the broader your scope, the more difficult it is to live in that intersection successfully.
Yeah.
So all this talk of well-being and mental health, what do you do to stay mentally sound and sane and take care of yourself?
Yeah, I'm so glad you are asking these questions, because if this was a year ago and it was before I knew I had lymphoma, although I always knew I had something, right? Like I was saying, but before I was active of, knowing I had cancer, I would have told you, well, I go to the gym, I work out, I take care, that kind of thing, right? Well-being has taken a whole new level for me. And when I will remember, and to answer your question specifically, I was with my doctor and I was still trying to figure out, like, well, what exactly is this and what's my course of treatment look like and yada yada. And I said, like, give me something I can do. Should I eat a bunch of blueberries, drink high pH water? Like, what am I doing to preserve my well-being and take some control back? And she looked at me in the eye and she said, Andi, you got to lower your stress. And I will never forget that moment when I realized that well-being is an all-day, everyday practice. Here I was running a wellness company and had dozens of health coaches working for me, and I would have told you I knew all about well-being until that moment. And I would say now, what am I doing? My first priority is managing stress. I spend a lot of time making sure that my day is structured so that I have time to breathe, so I had time to move, and movement has taken on it's no longer 2 days a week at the gym lifting weights. Right. For me, it's movement is zone 2 heart rate cardio, which is really important for cancer, and of course just, doing my best to be balanced in my eating. But for me, it's about moderation and balance. Yes. And so some of the things I'm doing. But I would say nobody's talking about stress as much as you don't realize how much stress is impacting our well-being.
Andi, I love everything that you've touched on today, and I think our listeners will really benefit from it. One thing that we ask every guest on our show is what well-off means to them.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot since this conversation started, and I've even listened to what some of your other guests have said about what well-off means to them, and all of it so wonderful. The word rich comes to mind for me. Whenever I think of well-off, I think of rich. And the word rich for me feels favorable, feels rich in life. It feels, maybe it's rich in your bank account, but it's a richness in your soul and living your soul's purpose. It's just this deep richness, and it's a really, really cool word.
That gave me chills.
I know, me too.
I was like, woo.
There's never been an answer that underwhelmed me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your unique perspective, and it gives us perspective.
Absolutely.
And validates what we know to be true, but that's a beautiful way to put that.
Thank you.
This was such an inspiring conversation, and really I hope that our listeners can take something away from this, whether it be from the leadership role or trusting your gut, or just looking out for you and maintaining your mental and physical health. Yeah,
if I could leave with one word or a couple of words, I would say just really listen. Don't discount what you know just because you can't articulate it with facts. If there's something you know, think about how you can advocate, express yourself, and you deserve to be heard.
Tell us how our guests can find you and follow you.
Thanks. You can follow me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Andi Campbell, and I'm Andi with an I, A-N-D-I, Campbell with like the soup, C-A-M-P-B. So Andi Campbell. You can also find me online at Andi-Campbell.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for being on. We appreciate it.